remote viewing is a great example of that. There's been a lot of studies around it. It is repeatable and it is verifiable. Phenomenal, right? This is a form, you could say, of remote viewing, but it's got, more pieces to it.
Yeah.
But we want to verify this, and because of that, we did the study in 2019, which was published in a medical journal in late 2020, which is the first study on medical intuition that's been published since in over 20 years.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood Taoist Master San Qing, and we're having an awesome day here today. As always, it's good to be me, and I'm pretty sure it's good to be the next guest that's coming in on the podcast. I want to welcome to the podcast Wendie Colter, medical intuitive, author, educator, and just a contributor to the conscious awareness that we are going through in 2024. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
And it's another day in paradise, I would say, because it's all how you look at that. Is it half empty or half full? What is your glass today? And
my glass is always full.
And that's
there's no half insight about it.
That's an interesting insight. It's so very much understood in the state of consciousness between yourself or myself in our own journeys, but many people are looking to find that answer. So why don't we start a little bit with just a brief sort of summation of how you got to where we are today?
Absolutely. I am a medical intuitive, and I train healthcare professionals in the skill of medical intuition. And I also train the public who wants to learn, anyone who wants to learn about how to use these really unique and fascinating skills on their, for themselves, on their own bodies. And that's, how did I get into it? Well, that's a fairly long story. I'm not sure I can be brief about it, but I'll try to nutshell it for you. I started out in energy healing over 20 years ago, and I noticed that as I developed my energy healing skills, like many energy healers, my intuition just grew and grew and grew, very naturally in a way. And always having been an intuitive kid, it didn't feel foreign or weird to me, right? And I noticed that I could actually see into people's bodies very specifically, into their physiology, their anatomy, and their life history. And as I could do that, I developed that skill. I noticed that information was really potent for my clients. And that sometimes when clients would come to see me, sometimes they would let go of things, their energy would shift, and sometimes it wouldn't. And I was doing the same skill set. So it wasn't about that, it was about their energy frequencies. And so I started shifting my practice into seeing what I could see intuitively first before I did any healing work. That was the ticket, because I was able to see where an issue had manifested, why it manifested, what the body was asking for to release it, what the energy field was asking for to release it. And that shifted my practice exponentially. And I realized only later that what I was doing had a name, and it was called medical intuition. And from there, their doctors would start calling me. And that's how my practice grew. And I realized at one point, honestly, that, if these healthcare professionals knew how to do this with their patients, wouldn't that change medicine? And that really gave me the idea that it was time to start teaching this very specific skill to that sector.
Wow. Yeah, it's an interesting path to go on when you get into intuition. As a dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell, would say that the crossroads between intellect and intuition, and someone who's a confessed, previously a NASA physicist, working solely in intellect as being 90% of his processing of any given second, there's this moment where you start to really refine those skills. And it's really quite something.
Yeah, what's really interesting about this work is I think it uses both the left and the right brain. I don't have any degrees in that area, But from what I've seen, you can imagine that healthcare professionals are very, quote, left-brained. They're very intellectually based, and they have to be. They have to know a lot. The skill of medical intuition, and frankly, the skill of intuition, is about not knowing. It has nothing to do with your body of knowledge. And I find that that is the learning curve for the people who come through my program, because they have to set all that aside in order to receive what I would consider, pure quantum field information, or however you want to say it, non-local information that pertains to their client or their patient that they would have no conscious awareness of. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about intuition in the healthcare field. These hits or gut feelings or whatever. A lot of people think, honestly, that it's your own body of knowledge or experience kind of bubbling up from your subconscious. Well, that doesn't fit with medical intuition. I have no medical background. Most of the prominent medical intuitives out there have no medical background. So we don't have a body of knowledge to draw on. And yet, in my case, in my students' case, when we did some research on this, we found 94 to 98% accuracy rates in their ability to, identify primary issues, the origin of those issues, a lot of things that they would have we have no access to patients' or clients' records, medical records. So where does that come in? Then if you want to really sort of tear that down, like, what is that? How does that work?
Yes. So what I was getting at was, when you look at that, it's like a culmination of perhaps remote viewing, but on a different level. And so I've been sort of teaching people clairsenses, clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling for about 32 years.
Mm.
And you do get to a certain point where people are like, well, Jafu, but I just want to learn this. Well, it's all under the umbrella of the same sensory perception. You just start to realize the five senses the human being may be perceiving is just the tip of the iceberg. And then you all bets are off once you obtain this sort of like what we call the Wu Ji, which is the stillness between the breath in and the breath out, which is where you access the mother, which is the Tao. So it's of a different frequency. So you're getting access to perfection, which some people would consider Akashic records. I just call it direct source to the mother. I start with a dialogue with my channel teachers, and then I end with a monologue with direct source information. So it's sort of like a catapulting sort of effect that takes place. And
Very nice.
You get right down to being able to visually see it and feel it, the pulpability of that energetic profile. And so that comes into sort of ancient Taoist practices of body dowsing and going deep into the center point of all things. Once you go into the center, things reveal itself. And that's what we call Wu Wei, which is like what we call effortless action.
I wonder if that's where woo-woo comes from.
I think so. A dear friend of mine, Ask Julie, I don't know whether you heard of Ask Julie Ryan. Anyway, she's a podcaster, and she's an intuitive. She's actually a medical intuitive also.
Wonderful.
And she uses woo-woo. And she goes, my goodness, the second I met you, San Qing, and you explained to me Wu Wei and the Wu Ji, I've been using woo-woo for my whole life. And that's exactly right.
No, I know. Thank you for that.
Right,
the
right.
origin of that term.
Right,
That's
right.
hilarious.
It's really funny how these sort of things all merge together.
Yeah.
And I think what I want to actually get to is your insight, because I remember the first time when I first started developing these skills, it was like it was almost like, I'm not going to say it almost, it was like a switch that was turned on. And I literally woke up with my eyes open, computer icons, and every object, every image had an aura and had information around it. So if I look at something, it will give me the information and the aura. So when I do a psychic reading, I just read people's auric field and their energy centers. And with that, you have the emotion of virtue, which is a Taoist sort of like understanding. And you just reveal someone's mental, emotional, and physical state inside of 30 seconds. And they go, you don't know me. Yeah. I don't need to know you. I'm just reading the information. I assume that's a very similar situation to you.
Absolutely. And I love your explanation of it. And yes, these are ancient, revered techniques, and they're very, very, what is the word? They're part of our human abilities. The question
Right.
is developing them and how you want to, or if you want to. And yes, absolutely. We read the biofield, the chakra system, the auric field. We can read Akashic records. We can go into past lives. I mean, there's no end to it once you start, tapping into that information. But medical intuition and the name for it really implies scanning the physical body for imbalances, anomalies, physical issues. I can see down to the cellular level, right? And even the subatomic level if need be, right? So
Yeah.
there's no real end to it. Interestingly, I teach a very specific skill of visual seeing, clairvoyance, right? That's that good old-fashioned word. And that just means being able to see from your mind's eye, from your third eye, whatever you want to call it, um, the information that's in the field of a human body or a human energy field or anything else. And that's the reason I use that, is because that was something that I developed over time. I could literally figuratively see, energetically see, and watch the little movie of someone's life and see where something began. And that information is typically hidden from our conscious awareness for a myriad of reasons, usually safety and security and yeah, things that we don't think are important that actually have shifted our trajectory in some way, right? Health wise or emotionally. And that information is really important for people's awareness. And I'll tell you, my favorite quote of all time when it comes to this is from Dr. Dean Ornish, a wonderful man who's really shifted the
Oh my
conversation.
goodness! Of course, he's
Yeah.
the plant-based heart cardiologist, right?
Yeah, yeah, I believe so. He's a wonderful man. He's written all kinds of books about all of this, and he said something that this is the motto for medical intuition and pretty much anything. He said, "Awareness is the first step in healing." What a succinct and beautiful way to put it. And when it comes to medical intuition, the idea is your body has so much to say. It has a lot. It holds on to everything, and so does the energy field. So if our bodies and energy fields store information that's critical to our understanding, well, how do we tap into it? How do we learn about it? How do we reveal that? How do we discover that? Medical intuition is the opportunity to, either for yourself or as a professional, to ask, literally talk and listen to the body itself, which is wonderful. I'm happy to have conversations with people's livers and immune systems and all the rest of that, because the information just is so potent and so beautiful, you know?
Yeah, it sounds very similar to the kind of construct of the original sort of understanding of traditional Chinese medicine that sort of
Mhm.
was created by one of my teachers, the Yellow Emperor, who was basically the founder of Taoist alchemy. He had created a relationship with the universe. He downloaded over 18 days and nights, being pinned and magnetized to the earth, all the information for Chinese culture as we know it today, and the traditional to simplified sort of language that they're sort of we're operating in within China. Now
Mm.
that that would be the entry level. When you look at things, you can it's strange because we have these spirits within Taoism that are keepers of the energetic field, what we call the Nidan, which is energy field, and the Dantian. So the Dantian are the energy centers, which you would call chakras.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you just basically, once you start to become more sensitized to these practices, you develop a really deep ability to feel and be able to identify the different sort of profiles of these energetic potentials. And
Mm.
this is there when you start to go, oh, okay, well, the emotion of virtue is out of whack here. We look at the first five elements, which is
Yeah.
the heart, the liver, the lungs, the kidneys, and the spleen. And then whatever is excess or deficient, you balance that energy out. And of course, I just love it. I mean, even right down to something as simplistic and as ancient as reflexology, which is really just looking at a micro to a macro. You can take someone's face within Chinese face reading to their hands, their feet. We call them Lao Gong points. And you have the whole human system right there and what's running where, when, and how. And the more you refine these skills, and clearly you have an incredible system, it becomes quite reliable. And you want to be able to validate this self-validation, this realization that you're not having a diluted state of and this happens. And very rarely, I'm not going to lean towards that because that's just your curiosity. You first start there, but you need the skills to develop it. But this is what happens. And like, I think the really profound thing for you is that you've had that from day one. And that was something that happened to me was, wow, this information is real. This is real. Not a figment of my imagination.
Not at all. That
over and over again.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point. And my message has been, think about developing your intuition. There's a couple of things that you said in there I want to address that were beautiful. Number one is the Chinese medicine, from ancient Chinese medicine to modern. That is a beautiful system. I also want to point out, because I have to tell you this, someone told me about the first medical intuitive on record might have been from the Chinese medicine perspective, a gentleman named, if I say it correctly, Bianche. Are you familiar with this person?
Not real. I mean, there's so many variants. Quite frankly, when I look at Chinese medicine, it's been dissected and bastardized over history.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say this gentleman is written in some. You can read about him. He was able to look into the body as if it were made of glass, and he wrote about it, and people wrote about him. And someone pointed that out to me. And, the truth is I teach a lot of Chinese medicine doctors, acupuncturists, and TCM because of the correlations between just this background that you're talking about, these methods that are so beautiful and potent and accurate, and adding medical intuition skill set with that, how much more expanded it might be. But it goes hand in hand. It's beautiful.
Yeah. No. I was just going to say, I mean, you're bringing up this point, and it for me, people go, well, there's this. Well, for anyone who's a Taoist seeker, I always remind them, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. I mean, if we go down to the idea of the individual's journey is really a mirrored effect of the universe, which is we're all one. So that monologue becomes the realization of that. But to do that, there's a progression of this developmental skill that you embark on. And from someone like a Tom Campbell's perspective, he calls it, a simulation. Okay, well, it kind of makes sense if you start crunching numbers, but I don't get as deep as that. I just go straight for the information. My wow factor was witnessing physical healings. That's the fun that I love to watch.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like I imagine you have similar stories. Honestly, I've seen it all. There's nothing I haven't seen. From like,
you do this long enough, and that's definitely the experience. It's like, wow, the human experience of health and wellness or illness, there's always a point of inflection, you could say, where something kind of goes from healthy to, and you can see the energy shift, or you see where the energy has shifted. That information, I don't believe in miraculous healings. I believe that it's all about a person's awareness, and the words I use are permission. Permission for wellness, permission for healing. That's not a conscious process so much as an intuitive body awareness process, And so everything that I do and everything that I teach my students to do is to bring these imbalances to clients' awareness so that they and ask, how can this shift? How can this heal? And we see miraculous healings all the time, but they're not miraculous. They're about awareness. They're about bringing things from the body level to the conscious mind. And that is profound work, as well,
Yeah,
right?
it's about returning.
Mm,
Returning to the truth, returning to
yeah,
you.
that's
As
right.
a Taoist, we would call it perfection. The diamond is perfection, and every facet is a level of consciousness.
That's
It all
beautiful.
returns to the one, which
We,
is the now,
we
the present moment. That's all you
yes,
have.
that's exactly right. And our bodies are made to heal. Our bodies are designed to be vibrant and healthy to the degree that they can. And we think of, certainly Western medicine doesn't have that perspective. It's about illness care rather than wellness care. There's a lot of that. So the people that come through my program, interestingly, are people who have aligned themselves in some way with the understanding that conventional medicine is missing a major piece of the puzzle. And that is, the factor of our energy, our ability to shift our energy, and what that means. And don't forget, in the US anyway, we've had what, 30, 40 years of this whole concept of mind body practices, right? What did that start with? That probably started with yoga and meditation practices, and now probably every city or town in the United States has yoga studios and meditation practices. They're teaching it in schools to kids. It's wonderful. And you see this kind of, when you take that view, this sort of shift in awareness that mind body, what does mind body mean? Can my mind affect my body? Do my emotions affect my immune system? Yes. There's whole fields of studies in psychoneuroimmunology, psychoendocrinology, which talk about these connections between our minds and our bodies. There's years of study on adverse childhood experiences. You might have heard of that, ACEs, where they looked at early life trauma and how that can lead to later life health issues that don't seem like there's a correlation, but that's the correlation. What's happening, right? We want to know. And when you start knowing that, when you start understanding those connections, you're in a point of power, your position of understanding and awareness that gives you a path forward that might not have been available to your understanding prior to that. And that's, to me, the beauty and power of medical intuition. We're not just looking to look. We're looking to ask the body, what does it need to heal? What does the energy need to heal? What does the mind, the emotions, the spirit? Those are potent questions for people because they touch on, our sense of self and our sense of understanding of the world, on and on. I mean, it's endless.
Yeah, the dialogue is interesting. I mean, you can sit there and have a conversation,
Yeah. That's
and
the fun part. It's really fun.
well,
Yeah.
it's that self-evident, self-realized truth. And when someone gives me an absolute truth, I tell people to get up and run in the other direction. Now,
Oh,
your
without
absolute
question.
truth, right? Your absolute truth is validated by an experiential moment. There's nothing more to it. A lot of people tend
Yeah.
to go to the science model, and I appreciate that. We can go deep into DNA and epigenetics and understanding that if you have an insight, one of my teachers, the Jade Emperor, always reminds me, when you accept you know nothing, you know everything.
That's
And
beautiful. I
so
would
like,
go along with that one 100%.
right, right. And
I
I think that's where
Yeah.
you probably get a lot of students, as do I, that are literally, how do I put it? Everything else has failed. They always return back to the energetics, but it has to be palpable. So
Yes.
from a cultivational practice, that's why people pursue Taoist alchemy, because we get right down to what I call the get down, which is separating electric from magnetic,
Mm,
merging the two together. And we're looking at that energetic spectrum within what we consider a 3D reality for some of those that are into quantum physics, those type of levels of development. But understanding that you're already in a fourth dimensional reality, observing a third dimension for that to be possible. So
right.
you're taking an information that changes the whole playing field, but it has to be that realized moment. You can have a dialogue that could be considered, almost, delusional, but it doesn't when you start being able to validate it through the information you're getting, that for your own admission, I don't have a background in this, yet the information that I receive, that I hand to my clients, is like 98% accurate. I mean, it doesn't get any more sobering than that when you get that information. Yeah. And I think because human beings are designed to be fearful and critical of their very processes, the mechanism of survival, the idea of the fight or flight mechanistic fear-based realization, they sit back and they go, "Oh my goodness, maybe I'm just fooling myself. Maybe I need to, go and jump in the lake or drink a bottle of wine or do something to get me out of this, because this is insane." No, you're tapping into reality is what you're doing.
Yeah, I love how you're describing it. The the reason why we need scientific validation is to prove to the scientific community that there is validation for this. Otherwise, as has gone down since probably the late 1800s, is that anything energy based is considered crackpot. Well, it's not, and we're finding more and more practices being validated scientifically, and that's the reason for it. And frankly, I'm a big fan of the scientific method. Why not? If you can't prove it, if it can't be, the question with the scientific method is it repeatable?
Yes.
And the remote viewing is a great example of that. There's been a lot of studies around it. It is repeatable and it is verifiable. Phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
This is a form, you could say, of remote viewing, but it's got more pieces to it.
Yeah.
But we want to verify this, and because of that, we did the study in 2019, which was published in a medical journal in late 2020, which is the first study on medical intuition that's been published since in over 20 years. And it got a lot of people, particularly doctors, going, their ears perking up, going, "Well, I wonder, if this can be applied." And the answer is, of course, it can be applied in the healthcare field and conventional medicine. In fact, not to move too far off topic, but I'm also the president of the National Organization for Medical Intuition in the U.S. And what we are doing here is supporting research, creating opportunities for medical intuitives and healthcare professionals to work together. And I'm doing research now with the organization in the US on that concept to see if we can validate it further. We're at the very beginning stages of really bringing this out of the shadows. One of the first surveys that this organization did, we call it NOMI, National Organization for Medical Intuition. The first research we did, which we published, it's on the website, we asked U.S. medical intuitives how do they work with licensed medical professionals for medical intuition, because no one ever talks about this, right? We hear about individual medical intuitives. And guess what? 82% said that they work directly with licensed healthcare professionals for medical intuition services. And 86% of them receive referrals. That didn't surprise me so much. That's my history as well. And 30% of them themselves were licensed healthcare professionals. So what we're hearing now, when I wrote my book, I queried a lot of doctors who are open to this. Have you worked with a medical intuitive? Tell me your story. And it's all been in the background because of the stigma of this process and this practice, and just how fearful the conventional medicine world is about anything that has to do with energetic frequency or quantum feeling, quantum physics, or non-local consciousness. It doesn't compute for them, even though there's been decades of studies. So we want to bring this in organically to show them, guess what? You can get information from a qualified, experienced medical intuitive that can help you with your challenging patients, because that's typically when they call us, right? So we're all at the very beginning of this, honestly, and we're very excited about it because what we're seeing is more and more and more validation for it.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like, well, this is indigenous ancient practices that have been around
Yes.
for thousands of years.
No kidding. And we still have
Or
to prove.
right. Well, I mean, for me, that alchemy is so critical because a lot of people are like, well, I feel the energy, but I don't see it. Sometimes I see it in my third eye, and I'm like, that's great, but it can be problematic
Mhm.
because until you identify and realize, as the Jade Emperor would say, when you believe, when you know you are not of this body, what can harm you?
Mm. That's lovely.
And human beings have a real issue of being able to be whole, so they separate things. And that has been part of their, quite frankly, I wouldn't call it an organized authoritarian program, but it's some type of psyop that has controlled the consciousness of the individual seeker. And that's why people pursue these types of methods, your method, Taoist method. I always tell people there's a million ways up the mountain. There is no right or wrong way. The second you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own.
That's a very good
And
point.
and so once you get a taste, it's now find someone that can help you cultivate this so it can become repeatable. It can become validated. It can become self-realized, and then utilize this insight because everyone has the ability. Now it's always okay. The path is cultivating this very state of awareness. The first time I literally like woke up with this icon situation, bubbles around everybody, where I was walking around like I had a fat suit on, bouncing into people, and I could see their auras. And
Wow.
it became it really freaked me out.
I'm
For
sure.
a few, I spent what someone would consider 5 days and 5 nights equivalent to someone's 100 times worth of the dark night of the soul,
Mm.
where honestly, at the end of it, I thought I'd rather just take my own life than continue this sort of state of unraveling. But
Yeah.
everything was taken from me.
Mm.
And so I would just be like attempting to distract myself. I'd go into a movie and then some woman would walk onto the screen naked and I threw up in front of the person sitting in front of me. These
Mm.
type of physical effects of something that would be considered so benign, like something visual like that. But the visual and audible turn into this kinesthetic visceral experience. And that's
Mm.
really what people don't understand, this palpability that takes place. And as you refine the profiles, you're able to realize what that is. And you call it medical intuitive. I call it drive-by psychic readings. And so I
You
do
wanna
little,
know? I don't do that anymore. I'll
yeah,
share that with
yeah.
you. It can be, first of all, thank you for sharing your experience. That's powerful. And my intuition developed more sort of organically, slowly. It wasn't
You,
like a
you were
flash of
microdosed.
And I deliberately, developed it too. I really wanted to, have a skill set that I knew I could access on demand, that it wasn't gonna take me over, that I would be in charge of it. And that's how I've developed it for myself. And so, yes, you can be an wide open channel in that regard. And you can also learn how to moderate it for yourself so it's not overwhelming. That's the key for me. And that's really what I teach. The very first thing I teach my students is how to manage their own energy so they're not overwhelmed by any of it. They are in control. They're driving the bus, so to speak. And that's something that in traditional psychic worlds doesn't necessarily get taught, and even in the energy healing world or people who work with the biofield, you have to learn how to put up your own energetic boundaries, how to moderate your own energy. And when you can do that, then it becomes a wonderful skill set. I mean, I used to do like you, walk into a room and go, okay, dude, go talk to your mom and don't eat cheese and, all these, I could see everybody's stuff. And that didn't work. First of all, it's kind of invasive. It doesn't, when there's no permission to look, don't look, And so that's kind of one of my philosophies is we don't want to overstep. It's also important to have these skills that you can use for yourself in your own life, right? What's important to me? What do I need to know for my own well-being, for my own forward movement? And that's another way to use these things on a very personal level. And wow, it's like having your best friend, with you at all times, guiding you at all times. That's what intuition can be. And that's a beautiful way to use it as well, personally.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. When I talk about psychic drive-bys, it's more, would you like a psychic reading? And then
Sure.
most people go, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. But I mean,
Sure.
I mean, I think this would be the difference of opinion that you and I have is this.
Mhm.
There is a level of permission, but if you are me and I am you, what are you afraid of? There's only
Well,
one
you're
stream. There's no variable. I mean, that would be more potentially on a moral compass of a humanistic appreciation of the idea that we are separated. But if
mhm.
someone's using it with malice, there is an understanding that they will be subject to, within Taoism, generally speaking, levels of what I teach, which is magical rituals,
Mm.
is completely hinged on someone's karmic model. So if you are afraid and you allow your emotions to control you, which is 99.9% of people, that's the first thing that I teach someone is your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions, which is the
I'm
first.
with you. I'm with
It,
you on that. Yeah.
it's kind of like the delusion. Like when I hit that point right now, when you and I had a charge right up our spines, that's a connection. You and I had that feeling. You can't deny it just now. It's like an amplitude that takes place. And for most people, they're like, well, how do you even know that? Well, I see it first and I feel it if I choose to, but it's going on all the time. And once you develop these skills, this is kind of like right where we need to be. Now, I don't go out of my way to step on someone's boundaries, which some people have, some people don't. That's
Mhm.
why when I start with, if I do a reading and it's more just for entertainment value, it comes down to quite simply this. I start at the bottom. Within Taoism, we have 9 dantians that attach from the earth to the universe as a starting point. We got up to 108 energy centers, but the first 9 is the earth and then the traditional chakras, but we don't call them chakras, they're dantians. And so when you start at the boundary level, which is the perineum, which is basically what they call the root chakra, that's where you find out how many boundaries do people really have. And you work out, oh, okay, this person's a little sharp. We're going to just stay away from that. But I always stop there because people go, sure, magic man, give me a reading. And I just do it for fun because I take my kids down to the strip. I'm in Nevada, and we live in Tinseltown or whatever you want to call it.
Right, right.
So we'll go down to the strip for fun street magic day where I've taught them remote viewing and distant healing and
Yes.
psychic readings. The first thing they broke their teeth on was the basics of hypnosis and understanding the conscious unconscious mind. So when you
Wow.
walk up to someone and you offer them that, they go, sure, they've got a little buzz, they're partying, they're in Las Vegas, and then I always start at the bottom because you start with the boundaries, then you get to the sexual energy, and they go, whoa, 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 whoa,
Yeah,
whoa, you
exactly.
gotta stop right now.
Slow
And then
down.
because all of a sudden they're going, this is real. This is
Mhm.
really happening right now. I'm like, listen, this is not an assassination or assault on your personality. This is just me reading information. I need you to realize that I'm not attached to the outcome. I don't need you to validate I'm the next coming of Jesus or I'm the new healer of the Jesus Christ God, because this is how people perceive this stuff. And I
Yeah.
feel that you're teaching people how to embody it as a whole rather than in a state where they need to be validated by their environment that, oh my goodness, you're so amazing. I can't
Yeah.
believe you have that insight. I can't believe you can do all these things, which is problematic in my opinion, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
also not it doesn't have to. I've trained around the world. I've cultivated energies, with people that I don't do it. It doesn't excite me, but I can train people in levitation and separating electromagnetic, putting someone on a wet rag, getting them to step on it, shooting an electric charge through their body. It's
Goodness.
entertaining at one time, but at a certain point you go, okay, these are great, but I want to see physical healing. It's a
Yes,
process of
exactly.
cultivation.
What you're talking about is really interesting, I think, because it really touches on spiritual ethics And, how that conversation is long overdue. One of the things I teach in my program, and actually from the beginning and throughout, are spiritual and legal as well ethics, particularly when you're talking about health and the physical body. That puts a whole other level of, ethical awareness into it. How far should we go? How far can we go? How far can't we go? And that's critical to medical intuition in particular, because we want to support people. We want to support their healing. We want to give them from their energetic information a path to follow. Think about it. People spend thousands and thousands of dollars chasing health, don't they? They do.
Yeah.
And so what I and my graduates can do is take a look and converse with your energy systems, your body, to find out what are the priorities from your body's perspective, from your energy's perspective, not from what somebody tells you you should go do or something that you've tried and have failed, at. And these are the people that we really want to serve. Um, there's nothing wrong with any form of medicine in my book. I don't have any bias about it at all. And I ask my students not to as well, because the minute you do that, you're putting a blinder on, aren't you? You're just not going to see, what is the body asking for? It might be something you think is total crackpot, but what if the body wants it, right? Or the spirit wants it, or, whatever your biases are. So people have to learn how to leave all of that aside, get out of that, conscious left brain that's all bias, and just purely in the moment of interaction, see what's there, see what's real, as you say beautifully, and impart that to the client in a way that supports them and empowers them, doesn't diminish them. And that's where the ethics piece comes in, right? How do I say what I need to say? How do I not overstep? Here, with medical intuition, you've got to be aware of HIPAA, which is about personal health information. You have to be aware of supporting. So, all of these things are fairly new conversations in the world of energy healing and energy medicine and psychic development as well. Luckily, there are some wonderful folks out there that are really carrying the standards for ethical practices, and the National Organization for Medical Intuition does too. We have a whole code of ethics that informs standards of practice when you're working with people's health information. And that's a little different. The psychic world will talk about love and, all that stuff, relationships and money and blah, blah, blah. Something that's a little less, um, I would say ethically tenuous, you could say, than talking about someone's health and wellness and, opportunities for that. That's just something I wanted to throw in because it sounds like what you're doing is phenomenal. Um, and people can get very wary of that. There's been so many unethical, brilliant intuitives, but unethical in their practice. And that's why people are afraid of this. That's why we have a reputation. Anybody who works with intuition has a reputation of potentially being a charlatan, because there's no obvious ethical boundaries there, and people have taken advantage of it, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, you
Mm,
create your reality. So it's kind of like you gravitate to that present moment, and how you feed, as my dear friend Tom Campbell would say, the large consciousness system is you put out what you receive. It's like within Taoism, we
mm,
call it
yeah.
this mirroring effect.
Yes.
So, there's an incantation that I use all the time that I give people a very great insight. It's very visceral. It comes from the Jade Emperor directly. I mean, this goes well beyond what we consider contemporary versions of mental or physical health, but let's just go there. A power abundant in its giving, you will receive,
Mm,
unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering.
mm.
And
Beautiful.
just through the power of incantation, the power of linguistics, at a subatomic level, it has a visceral effect. And
Oh,
so you
yeah.
feel that vibration through your whole physical tissue, and you go, whoa, I don't know what you're doing here, but I am feeling it. And that, to me, is the self-evident part. It's like,
Yeah,
if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling, and you are the better barometer at your experience than anybody else.
without
And it still
question.
comes right back to, within Taoism, we consider everything a bellows. It's a
Mhm.
bellows. Everything, you are all things and nothing at the same time. You're contracting and expanding at the same time. And then you go for the Death Star moment. You ever seen Star Wars?
Mhm.
Where Luke goes into the Death Star. He has one
Oh,
shot.
yeah.
He's going to hit
Yeah.
that one shot. That is the Wu Ji. That is the
Amen.
stillness. So between the breath in and the breath out is the stillness. So
Yes.
that's between yin and yang. So within Taoism, there is no good or bad, up or down, right or wrong. There's just this element of the contrast and then the culmination of the two, which would, in some terms, you just look at right down to the center point of this, intellect to intuitive. You have the center point, which happens to be a lot of people's cultures, the third eye. If I had a discussion with a neurologist or a neuroscientist, I'd be like, nonsense. There's nothing sympathetically innovative there. You can't feel anything. I could tell you,
Pineal gland.
right? Once you master, well, within Taoism, we call it the three treasures: the pineal,
Mm,
pituitary, and the thalamus.
yeah, very
Is
good.
basically the control center that creates the
Mhm.
chemical fun factory
Yep.
that generates within the culture medium a transmission within your blood, which is the vehicle that creates the epigenetic, basically realized effect of your environment. You are the master, keeper, creator of your reality. You can turn on
Yeah.
and off genes at will.
I really I feel like I'm getting a master class here in in this beautiful philosophy and practice. Thank you so much for that. It's really lovely to hear your perspective on practices that have been going on for humans, since the dawn of humans. It's lovely to understand it from these various perspectives because it's such a it, inherent, I guess is the word, human awareness. Our culture has, you know, Western culture has like set it all aside. When I was writing my book, you might be interested in this. I looked as far as I could go, as far back as I could see in Western culture for evidence of medical intuition, or what would be called the practices of medical intuition. And what I found was that in the 1700s, there were, and I'm sure it goes back farther than this, but this is like written, you know, information that's in the history books. There were people who would, uh, uh, actually, Franz Mesmer, is that a name you recognize, Dr. Franz
Well,
Mesmer?
he's the OG of
Yeah,
hypnosis, right? So
exactly.
mesmerized is where the key word comes from.
Exactly. But his practices weren't what we think about as hypnotherapy now. His early
Non-verbal.
practice, yeah, he was using magnets and energy. He was moving his hands the way you see energy workers do. He was doing some pretty cool stuff. And what he found was, and what people who were using his techniques found was over the next 70 years, is that when the patient was, quote, mesmerized, some of them were doing medical intuition work on themselves and on others. They were seeing right into the body. They were seeing exactly what was going wrong. They were recommending remedies left, right, and center, things that were working. And in Paris in the late seven, I guess it would be the early 1800s to the mid 1800s, they called them somnambulists. And you'd go to the somnambulist to find out what was wrong with you. And imagine if you can, think about what the medical systems were like back then. People were giving people mercury and all kinds of terrible things. And the somnambulists were saying, no, no, your body wants this and your health wants that. And all of that was, pretty happening for at least 100 years, or approximately 100 years, until the early 1900s, when there was a big pushback on it. There were even studies done to validate it, that validated these practices. And I'm sure this happened as well in other cultures, to some degree. But here in the Western culture, there was a big left turn. or whatever you want to call it, away from that, where the scientists were saying, we want to think of the body as a mechanical object. Something goes wrong in the engine, you fix the engine from this perspective. And everything became parts and pieces from that point forward. And these wonderful um, uh, modalities that were developing in that period of time had to go underground, like osteopathy, the energy of the physiology of the body, homeopathy, all kinds of energy practices that, others had developed. Of course, they've come back. We're living in a time of almost a renaissance of this, aren't we? That's how I see it.
Yeah, I
You know?
mean, you could thank a hypnotist and a psychologist for mustering up equivalent to brainwashing NLP, and that was back in the 70s, and people that you may be familiar with, like Tony Robbins, has made billions of
Yeah.
dollars using the very understanding of how to enter someone's psyche into the unconscious and literally puppeteer a state of consciousness. For the audience, somnambulistic state is like the deepest state of trance from what they
Yeah.
would measure within a trance. And,
Yes.
up until a couple of years ago, someone would say only 2% of the population have the ability to access that, included. They also quoted the idea that only 2% of the population could generate a gamma frequency.
Well, that's
And again,
nonsense,
that's
isn't it?
just all nonsense. I've witnessed physical healings. I've been measuring my brain waves for years, and
Yeah.
I get into gamma between 100 to 400 hertz on a daily when I
Nice.
channel my teacher, Latsu, or any of my 171 teachers, which again, I'll repeat to the audience, are dialogues of the monologue. So they're just facets of information for all those new spiritual age people. They're Akashic Records versions. I'm just an OG. I've just been doing this a long time biologically. But, that's kind of where, you get to that state. So, part of that first thing that I taught my kids, that hypnosis is always a great way to be aware of things that are going on. But, when you ask someone like, we're doing street magic and reading people's minds and all that stuff, it's all fun and people love that. But like when you get someone and I go, do you want to feel like you're in bliss and that you have just gone to another state of like euphoria? And they're like, yeah, all right, what do we need to do? And their friends are getting the camera out, and sleep. And they're like, oh, what happened? And they're standing up and they're asleep. And then I go, okay, what do we want to do? Okay, let's erase their mind, take their wallet and keys, you're videotaping it, and then they'll forget where
You don't
they're
want to
at.
go there.
And so they wake up and I, bring them conscious. They're not unconscious. And they're like,
Right.
okay, so what's your name? And they're like, have you missed something? I got the wallet and keys in my hands. Did you miss anything? And their friends are like, oh, I can't believe this. And then in the same second, I could turn myself into Justin Bieber and they turn to me and go, oh my goodness, this is Justin Bieber. Can I get a photo?
Yeah,
Now,
you know what you're talking about. Yeah,
is
go
a
ahead.
validation of a state of consciousness, right? Everyone should
Sure.
understand that you can jump into these states. Anyone can do it at will. And the easier that you find yourself in the ability to get into a trance, you should realize you are already a master of what you do. And it's not about mind control. It's about realizing that you have the ability to focus at will. And a lot of people don't realize this.
And people ask me what can they do to raise their own conscious awareness? How can they, tap into these intuitive skill sets? And I always say, develop a meditation practice. It doesn't matter what kind of meditation practice, really. It's about quieting the mind and connecting to universal source or quantum field or non-local consciousness or whatever you want to call it, and start allowing that information to just filter in. And don't let your conscious mind, negate things. Just be present, as you're saying. And that can change lives right away. That'll change your state of being right away, your energy frequency. Exactly. And that's something that our physiology loves. I don't know if anyone's noticed it, but when you come out of a meditation, don't you feel good? Uh, the body loves it. The energy loves it.
Yeah,
That's
no,
the one piece of advice I generally
I
give, yeah.
always get people to go, look, look, hypnosis is cool. I think you should learn it. When I do channeling in high states of direct source information, it's on another level, another world. I can
Yes.
sit here and literally, if I didn't need sustenance, my teachers could give me information nonstop till my last breath on this physical plane.
Mm.
That's very much how I do things, in the sense that my awareness is I can hear them, I can see them just like I see you, but it's a developmental skill. It's a sensory perception. That's all it is. It's like Oliver Twist. You want more? Yes, sir. May I have more? All you do is need to ask, and you will be provided for. And it sounds so simplistic, yet once
That's really
you get into
true.
that Wu
Yeah,
Ji space, you're
yeah.
accessing the ability to do this,
You
and
know,
it
yeah.
cultivates to develop.
It does, and another way to say that is a very pervasive in modern culture, and that is the law of attraction, you know? All
Right,
these wonderful things that are coming forward now that really help us understand that we have a frequency that we can be the curators and masters of. We don't have to be at the effect of our physiology, our yeah, I mean, this is a pretty high level conversation. Most people who come to medical intuitives are suffering with something, right?
right.
So they want to not be suffering and they want to know what does their body and their energy want them to know so that they can alleviate suffering. And that is the conversation of medical intuition, really. But the bigger, broader conversation is what you're bringing forward here, and that is where are we, what do we have, quote, I don't like the word control. What do we have mastery? Where can we gain mastery in our own lives, right? And that's profound stuff, man. That's what everybody is seeking, is an understanding and awareness so that we're not feeling like we're bombarded. We're not feeling like we're the effect of our whole lives or the world around us. And boy, did we choose to get born into an interesting time, right? This is an interesting time where everything is heightened. So it is kind of, well, it's certainly my mission to help both my clients and my students and healthcare in general understand the energetic aspects of all of this so that people can feel more in a mastery state with their own health, their own wellness and well-being.
Amen to that, my dear friend. I tell you what, you want to doubt? Look, if we look closer, you probably find out you were a Taoist in a past life. Who knows?
I'm sure I
And
have been. I've always been attracted to that.
well, you see, I mean, and it gets so deep because I always tell people, become the master keeper creator of your reality, and people
Exactly.
are like, "Whoa, that's a tall order." Well, let's start with the infantile stuff, which I call the baseline entry level to any Taoist seeker. It starts with your emotions don't control you; you control your emotions,
Right
and then
on.
people go, "Whoa."
Right
Okay,
on.
well, I'm going to give you the skills. I'm going to show you how to develop your own skills to remember who you are. And within a certain period of time, you're going to develop those skills. Now, I went to the trouble of putting 2 years worth of heavy energetic mastery into an app that people just hit play and they go. The first
That's
thing they
great.
did, within the first second, they hit play and they feel like they've had 5 pina coladas, 10 days in the Bahamas, and a full body massage, and they go, "What, Jiao Fu? What in Tao's name is this?" It's a visual, audible experience, and you get a kinesthetic, visceral charge.
Fantastic. I
And
love
that's
that.
what you have
Yeah.
to. That's and I mean, what happens is I tell people do 9 weeks of this. You walk away. You become the master of your emotions. You can be janitor at McDonald's or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. What you walk away with is something that is deeply embedded, imprinted into your physiology, your psychology, your spiritual
And you're never the same.
realization,
You're never the
and
same.
it's yours forever.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that doesn't matter what you're doing, you can call on it. So I like to tell people, okay, you're spending this time spiritually enlightened, you're doing your meditation stuff. When I get people to do the stuff that I created, you need to be able to measure it the first time you do it. They're like, what?
Mm,
Oh, you
mm.
can measure it. That means that I give you an exercise to measure how much you've developed within the first experience, because that's how
Oh, that's
fast it
beautiful.
happens.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
happens.
great.
That's the
That's
truth.
great.
That's how you, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I love that. And you're right on. We're very aligned in this concept. And on my website, thepracticalpath.com, there are guided meditations, short, 5 minutes, for people to learn how to work with and manage their energy. And it includes physical, emotional, and mental energies and spiritual, so that they can start to have some mastery over their own life experience in these areas. And these are free for the public. I put them on the website a long time ago because I saw that my clients wanted something to take with them that would help them move forward in their own healing processes. And I find that doctors send their patients to listen to those audios, and I have a whole program on it for the public called Medical Intuition for Healing and Self-Care. That's on the website as well. And that's, develop this for yourself. We're all masters when you put it that, when you think about it that way. And there's no downside to learning how to uh, manage your energy, your emotions, your feelings, your physiology, your physical nature, all of that stuff. It's all within our grasp. It's all within our purview, put it that way.
Yeah, it's like the ecosystem, the macro of a
Mm,
micro. So
mm.
I constantly get messages from people that use the app. I did, and it's like, I'm a doctor, I'm a this person, that person, I'm a personal trainer, and I've never really had no background in any sort of like spiritual seeking or meditation or what is supposed to be meditation. But the second I use this thing, within days, I'm literally redirecting what I thought was impossible. Like I'm having a hissy fit and I can literally stop it, control it, and move it off the screen. And I'm like,
Yes.
that's exactly
Yeah.
what it's
That's
there
it.
for. And you're
Yeah.
welcome. What can I say?
And when people realize they can do it, it changes their lives. It changes life,
Right.
and your experience of it, and people lighten up like crazy, right?
Well,
That what we're supposed to do.
well, it's about it's the mastery, right? I
Yeah.
spent decades entertaining, well, not entertaining, helping thousands of people, but then I got to a point where I felt like I lost my way.
Mm.
So I was entertaining most of the affluent, you know,
Mm.
CEOs, Fortune 500 companies, anyone that needed this type of like insight. And you get a network of people that just start going, oh, well, go and see that guy. I have randomly, grandma's in a coma. She's going to die tomorrow. The doctor said she's not going to live. And I'll be like, no, that's not going to happen. And they're like, what? I know you're that guy, but seriously, don't say that type of thing to me. Next day, she comes out of her coma and they go, whoa, how is that possible? Listen, look, this is about helping people.
Yeah.
And if I have a few people that contribute to sustaining my financial needs, I want to help millions of people. That's the
Mm.
whole purpose of it. And so
Yeah.
through the course of my day, I can wake up and go to sleep and help thousands of people that have nothing to do with a monetary transaction, yet they're getting access to things. And I mean, there was an interesting one. I had this one woman, and she came to me and she said, look, my mother's in a coma. And I said, look, I know you're doing this. I need you to explain to me why you're doing this. Well, I don't want her to die. Come on, let's get real. And she's looking at me like, what? You have conflict with her. She's telling me right now, if you want her to come back, you need to welcome her, because you two have been fighting for years and you're like praying that she dies. And she
Mhm.
can come right out of it. She'll come right out of it. And she goes, no, I really want her there. I'm like, you sure? Next day she came out. The doctors are like, what is going on here? This woman should be gone. And
Mhm.
then the daughter freaked out because she wanted to like exhaust all ideas that in her moral compass, that she did everything she could possibly do to go, you know what? She died. Thank goodness. What a miserable person. I've got over it. And she was doing the moral sort of like version of what she wanted to satisfy her friends and family for, but she didn't really want her mother to live. And her mother was
Interesting.
absolutely determined by, I will not return if you don't want to mend some type of relationship. I share that with her and she goes, no, I do. And when she came out of a coma, it was like, she couldn't believe it. She was like,
Yeah.
holy crap, this really happened. And like,
Yeah.
listen, I'm not here to entertain. I just explained to you what I saw. I shared the concern she had with you. You lied to me. I knew you were lying to me, but I'm not going to force your hand and go, you're lying to me. I'm just explaining to you. I wanted to ask you first. The mother said, okay. She comes out. You didn't like it. And she passed away the day after. She
Mm.
said, you know what? I don't want to be here if this relationship is not going to be mended, because the daughter, the granddaughter, the sister, they were all plotting to really get rid of her. And
Wow.
it's very
That's a
sad. For me,
powerful
it was
story.
sad. It was very sad because
Yeah.
all I wanted to do was mend this loss, right?
Yes.
And she was
Yes.
returning home. She
Yeah.
had the ability. She was so young. She was only 70. Like young.
Mm.
This day and age, with the way things are, that anyone breathing right now has the physical potential to at least live to 120 years of age. At least. Now, how you do that, what you do with that, how you nurture that, whether that's because within a Taoist seeker, immortality is the very fabric of all internal alchemy cultivation. So
Mm.
we've been pursuing that and mastering the 50 trillion cells of this physical flesh for thousands of years. And that's why it's so permeable what we do, and it's so palpable, and you can switch in and out and feel the energetic profiles. But that type of situation is something that people come across, I believe. I don't know whether you even go there in that type of situation, but this happens so often for people where they want the help, yet when it's handed to them, it's like, oh no. Now, if I had went, hey, listen, this is going to cost you blah 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 blah, and this is how much my time is worth, da, 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 maybe she would have thought differently. But I'm not here to do that.
Mm.
But if you had charged her, maybe she would have had a different attitude towards the revitalization of her mother that should have been dead.
When I hear that story, thank you for sharing that really powerful story, and really gets to the point of what are our internal motivations and belief systems that we are not even ourselves conscious of, or we won't admit them to ourselves, or whatever is going on under the surface. And there's so much of that when it comes to our health, isn't there? There's
Right.
all kinds of reasons that may not be conscious to us, or to my clients or whatever, that something is happening. And then do they want to shift it? Do they want to heal? That's a whole other question, right? It's not just does the body want to heal, because our cells are always want to heal unless the body is so exhausted that it's ready to leave. But consciously, we may want that, consciously we always want to heal, and the body wants to revitalize itself. I have a theory that we could live indefinitely.
Yeah. No,
But I'm
absolutely.
not sure how, but why not? um the what you're talking about from my frame of reference is what I would call belief systems and unconscious decisions that we make, that either we don't admit to ourselves or we don't have access to understanding them, for all kinds of emotional, psychological reasons. But in the practice that I do, it's designed to ask, what are those reasons? Why is something stuck? What is going on under the surface there that keeps an issue from healing, and that could be a relationship from healing. It doesn't have to be a physical issue. And I would look at it from that perspective, similarly to what you did with that woman and her mother. It's all about awareness. Every scintilla of it is about bringing these things to awareness so that you have a position of choice, a conscious choice, and um, grace, even about whatever the circumstances of your life are. I think the biggest challenge for humans is understanding, and this is a big thing to say. I think you'll agree with me on it, though. I think the biggest challenge for humans is understanding that they are in a point of choice in every point of moment of our lives, because we don't feel that way, and we're not inculcated to feel that way. And there's a big argument for victimization and suppression and all of that, which is absolutely true. And I encourage my students to read a book called Man's Search for Meaning. I'm sure you've read that book by Viktor Frankl. Are you aware of that wonderful book? great book to read. It really goes along with all of this. This was a German psychologist, actually, in the 30s, over the war. He was Jewish, and I believe he was interned in a death camp in the war. And his book is about his experience in there, where we were literally in hell, a kind of a hell on earth, where in order to survive it, he started understanding where his point of choice was in how he used his thoughts. That's powerful stuff. And he started experimenting with what made him happy in his mind when all he could see around him was pain and suffering and hell and his own pain and suffering. And he concentrated on his wife's smile. His wife was interned in a camp aside from him. He wasn't near her. But he allowed the thought of his wife's smile to carry him forward. And he noticed that his experience changed. The guards would give him extra bread. They would shelter him from other issues. I mean, he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't asking for anything. He was shifting his energetic vibration. That's what he was doing. And he was teaching his fellow, internees or whatever they're called, who were suffering, how to do this, because he was put into the infirmary because he was a doctor, even though he wasn't a physical doctor, medical doctor. And he started teaching people this, and he found that those who were near death died in peace, not in turmoil. Those who survived actually survived with him. And he wrote all about it. He developed a whole new method, which I believe is part of what sort of permeated the culture now that we're seeing, where people are starting to think about, what mastery do I have in my life over my circumstances? How can I shift this? And, it's wonderful to see this, because this is not new teaching. This is, as you say, it's ancient understanding. So I think we're in a very powerful time here, and taking advantage of the practices that are available to everyone all over the world with the internet, mindfulness training and Taoism and intuitive practices and meditation practices. Now is the time, man. Go for it, all of you who are listening, and just start learning how to manage your energy, how to manage your mind, manage your emotions, and learn that there's a whole realm of experience you can have that is not, may not be where you're at right now, that can really lighten us up, free us up, right? I get very excited talking about it, because it's not necessarily medical intuition, but it's the message of medical intuition.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this brings me to the question that I always get asked, and the reason I give people the red flag answer to their very question, which is always, I can feel energy and I can see it and I'm good. I didn't do any formal training. I'm just intuitively there. And I'm like, oh, that's very good. I think that's great. I tell you what, until you develop specific skills, you're still in a problematic situation. Like, what are you talking about? Well, if I turn the lights off and I hand you something and you're playing with it in the dark, and then I turn the lights back on and it's actually dog shit that you thought was just some silky ball of fluff, this is the issue that takes place with energetic profiles. Because if
Yes.
you're still playing in fear,
Yes.
which is the construct of the human condition, then you are going to be subject to the karmic model. And
And
so
so well said. Yes.
fearlessness and understanding that the emotions are just vibrational shifts of your micro of a macro universe is how you create that fluidity, which we call Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, the flow, baby, the flow. And
Yeah,
so
that's right.
with the flow, this is the problem. I say, well, they go, well, Jiffer, give me an example. I'm like, okay, you're a light worker, you're an energy person, you're a Reiki master, you're a Qigong person, whatever. You're a psychic. Okay, what happens at the end of your day? I'm exhausted. Here we go.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Well, one of the fundamental parts of Taoist alchemy that people get attracted to, why it's so sexy, is because we get you to understand that you are the master of this 50 trillion cells. You
Yeah.
are the master keeper creator of what happens within this anchor, within this 3D reality. So what happens is When you realize that everything is contracting and expanding at the same time, you're all things and nothing at the same time, the bellows is a representation of that. The Tao will remind you, the mother will remind you, man is not. Man is mortal. Man is limited. So if you identify yourself as this physicality, you will be subject to the limitations of what you perceive. So now there has to be no separation. For you to obtain that is the present moment. That's it. You will not acquire it any other way. That means that that present moment is no place, no person, no thing. You go from what I call first person, third person to no person.
Yeah.
And then that's where the magic happens, baby.
Yeah.
That's where it
Absolutely.
happens
Yeah.
right there. The Wu Ji, the center point of all things. You know, some people might call it the Vesica, the center of all things.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That is the essence of. Now, I would never say this to doctors because people in their left brain, it kind of blows their minds. But this is what we're doing. We're learning how to connect in this way that doesn't have to do with our own personalities, our own belief systems, our own constructs, our own limitations at all. The non-local consciousness is another way to say it. I was privileged to interview Larry Dossi. I don't know if you know him, for my book. He's written a lot. He's a medical doctor that also figured out that we have access to what he calls non-local consciousness, which is essentially what you just beautifully described, is this no body, no thing, no, it's just a connection to consciousness. And he found that it worked so beautifully as a medical doctor for him, and that he could assist his patients in ways that he never even thought were possible. And the pushback, of course, from the medical community was powerful. And this is, I love that you're teaching this, and thank you for all of this. It's very similar to the concepts that I work with as well, obviously. And we need more of this. We need more understanding of this. We need it to be taught in schools. How can kids just learn how to center themselves and offload or release these emotions that can really hamper our experience of life? Not that emotions, they need to be processed. We need to work with our emotional states. But when they turn our energy when they interfere in our energetic flow, beautifully said, we need to know that we can actually work with it. We can actually master this. I call it releasing. We can release these things and not have them hamper our energy to create a system of anomalies that can lead to bigger problems later. That's how I see the thing working when it comes to physical imbalances. So, it sounds to me like we're on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, within Taoism, we call it the Jing, which is your constitution. So I always give people an example. So you're born into this world with a battery life. Now, I've never seen anyone at 100%. They're normally at 80, 75, 80, maybe 90. That means your potential is not met. You're not subject to the hereditary DNA expression of your limited flesh and blood. That's just your potential. So now you get into, okay, well, how do I level up, Jifu? Well, it's quite simple. That's why Taoism is so potent. Is you cultivate that, you saturate the 50 trillion cells, you get up to 100%, then you go from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 9,000, and you're a superhuman at that point. And, we do silly things that it used to be popular party tricks for me. I'll envelop my forearm in anesthesia and run a skewer through it, and there'll be no entry or exit point. I'll pull it out. This is part of Qigong. And iron fist training and iron shirt training and things of this sort of magnitude, where you're merging from the tactile physicality into the deep center energetic potential, you can ward off a lot of intervention from mental, emotional, and physical stuff. So when you have a robust energetic profile, aura, field, magnetic field that comes from the center point, you can ward off things. So iron shirt training is an example of that, where someone will literally have to punch you 3 or 4 times before they'll break the energetic potential that you've created. That's for someone who has that developmental skill.
Mhm.
Now, that's just from a martial form, but part of martial arts is about projecting the spirit. We call it spirit projection within Taoism. So you've already exited the physical body and entered your opponent. Now, that could definitely be in violation of your integrity, moral ethic code, but I don't think that's going on when you have a martial jousting effect there. But that, generally speaking, that's how you are able to obtain a hand up over your opponent. So
Mm.
from a Taoist, you would look at their weakest link. So whatever organ is the weakest, the most excess, and you would go straight for that organ, and that would dismantle the opponent. Now, I've never been excited about martial form. I teach the internal alchemy, but I don't get all warm and fuzzy by teaching people Tai Chi and Bagua. I want to teach someone how to become whole and return to who they really are. And that comes from the Tao Te Ching, which is what we call the magical register, which is 81 verses of 81 incantations that have 81 levels of consciousness in each incantation, and a frequency that goes with it, and a color and a shape. So when people go on that magical mystery ride, the second they inhale the first incantation, they are in a whole Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. You want to produce DMT naturally, you go on that mystery ride.
That is wonderful. I really appreciate your yeah, like I said, I feel like I've been in a master class today. Thank you so much, because it's wonderful for me to hear the ancient origins of these practices that are with us, and obviously your mastery of them is profound. And as a medical intuitive, my whole perspective, you'll get a kick out of this. I called my company The Practical Path, and I called it The Practical Path because when I was starting all my spiritual practices and learning and education, uh, I thought, somehow I kept guided to what is the most useful practical information that I can use for myself and then I can give to my clients, because there's I mean, it's a rich world of intuitive practices and energetic practices. What's going to be the lever that helps them make a switch? What's going to be that will help me shift my energy? And that's where I've put my focus, and believe me, I love everything you've said. It's just so exciting and interesting, and you've made me think. Well, I'm going to have to learn more about all this.
Well, I think what we come to realize is that you are me, I am you, and we're all getting that
Mm,
information, and it's just
yeah,
coming in a different angle,
sure.
and it returns to the same place, which is remembering who you are. And
Beautifully said. Yes.
you
Yeah.
just gravitate to that resonation. And so people are like, well, what does that mean? Well, if you want to get all quantum-y-ish, light to wave to matter to particle to intention, attention, intention, creating what you perceive as a distortion from a Taoist perspective, this reality is cut from the cloth of perfection, the mother, and you have
Mhm.
distorted it to a certain energy. That energy creates a vibration. That vibration has a frequency. That
Mhm.
frequency, if met, is a resonation. When you resonate with it, oh yes, it will be yours. Oh yes. And that's where people
Mm.
go, oh my goodness, manifestation. And you get the people talking the manifestation.
Yeah.
And oh, have you read The Secret? And I
Yeah.
believe the reason The Secret was so problematic for so many people was they asked one question that was a mistake. What are your values? What are your values?
Yeah.
Well, you cannot manifest if you're separating yourself from that present moment. So your
Mm.
values are not part of the recipe of the now.
I will agree with you on that. And years ago, I used to, really study I still do the Abraham Hicks work, which The Secret is based on. Beautiful stuff. And some people really resonate with it and they use it as I do. Some people really feel it's not right for them and that they don't get it and they do other things. And as far as I'm concerned, I just wanna say this, kind of to, put a point on it, I suppose. How exciting that we can even have this conversation right now. 100 years ago, we'd probably be, whispering furtively to each other about all of this stuff.
Well, you're
Uh,
no,
huh?
I was going to
In
say,
the
I mean,
US.
the Taoist path with all the emperors of China they've always had their Taoist alchemist, their
Yes.
guru, their
Yeah.
advisor, and they were the first ones to be executed in the change of the guard, because
There you go.
access to harnessing true source was nothing but a potential danger
Of
that
course.
you can control others or manipulate this. We have Taoist magic for weather, for constellations. We go into all the variables, and they all are very potent, powerful association with the seeker. The seeker's realization of the whispers of the universe that reinforce this 3D reality is a mirror of the universe. And so when people get into it, they're like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah, I
that's
know. It
all
really
it is.
blows
It's
it.
like remembering who you are. And people that
Exactly.
are crazy, authoritarian, power-hungry mental
They
manipulators do not want you to remember who you are.
Of
They
course they
don't want
don't.
you to be the now. They don't
Yeah.
want you to realize that you can access this at will. So they need to manipulate your perception. That's why I tend to have issue, and I shouldn't. It's my personality. People go, Jifu, you have a personality. Yes, I like riding my side by side in the desert at 100 miles an hour, and I like chocolate and Netflix. Guess what? You can have your personality. I would never recommend erasing your personality. This is problematic.
No,
But
it's
being able to realize that you can switch to this present moment and access what's necessary to help as an ambassador for planet Earth. You're embodying and helping with the conscious collective of humanity. This is one of the main causes or the effects of being in this 3D reality from a Taoist seeker's perspective. Now, there are many versions of that, but I mean, within Taoism, we're very clear on that cultivational practice, and that, this variable is really something else, and that everyone has a seat at the table. There is no one excluded from this very moment. And
I am
so
absolutely in alignment with you on that, and, you know, my program, in medical intuition, actually, I'm very happy to say, seems to have that effect. It's not just a skill set. It's a way of looking at the world, your own life, your own experience of life, and your clients as well, to help them see the broader picture, the deeper meanings, the point of mastery. That is a huge there's nothing small about this, it is enormous, and it again, it's whether we know it or not, we're always seeking that sense of what is a good word for it? Freedom, choice, uh, mastery, understanding. Lifetime after lifetime, we seek this, don't we? It's getting a deeper awareness and understanding where our joy is, our sense of freedom is. It's beautiful work. I mean, I have to just thank you so much for the work that you do, and thank you for engaging me in this wonderful conversation about the point of being a human, on this planet at this time or any time. It's powerful stuff, and people who teach this with humility and grace, I believe this is what this is all about. This is why I do what I do. I'm not here for personal aggrandizement at all. Just like you were saying, I'm here to assist and support and help you find your mastery. And I love that you do that too. Thank you so much.
I want to thank I want to thank you. I mean, you initially get a taste. I got to admit, I had that moment 30 years ago when I witnessed a physical healing for the first time.
Yeah.
And it was like, gangrenous flesh going back to pink in color in 40
Mm,
minutes. And
wow.
that to me was like,
Yeah.
I mean,
You see that? You do that for yourself, which I healed myself of a little tumor, uh, uh, almost 30 years ago. It's like, okay, well, what's actually happening here? You know,
right,
can we
right.
actually bend time and space? Do we actually have mastery over our own physiology? That kind of thing, it changes your perspective on life. And
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I mean, I was just going to say, from me, I believe part of the entry level into remembering who I was from past lives
Mm,
was I instantly on my path as a Taoist priest, ordained into two lineages of Taoism. That's what I teach people, the ancient practices of those. One's a 66 generation holder, the other one's 126 generation holder. That's great, but I get that fundamental stuff, but I get all my real source from my teachers who give it to me immediately. And I started that remembrance with Lao-Tzu over 30 years ago. That was he was the first one I channeled, and has been a direct source of information for me for 30 years. And so it's
Beautiful.
like you validate it that way. When I witnessed that this woman's foot should have been amputated, and to watch it what I think the audience needs to understand is you watch the flesh wiggle and resume and wiggle and resume and wiggle to a point where you think you're starting to trip out and things are getting weird. Now, what I reference that to for someone that wants to experience or even perhaps identify in their mind is I always stop people with bending metal, because bending metal is a great way to get a center point. And the first initial understanding of that is you take the piece of metal, you feel the tactile resistance of it, you find your focus point, the center of it, you put your intention to it, and it just bends like butter. And then the next graduation is holding a spoon and bending it like, melting it like a candle. And then the third graduation, when I teach people this, is taking the forks with your intention and moving them in either direction. These are developmental skills, but that's no different to flesh, to manifestation, or anything. But it doesn't happen with me going, oh, can I do this? And if I do it in front of people, am I going to get all these accolades? And are people going to say that I'm amazing? And no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, if the ego enters into it, we've crossed a line with, with that ethical kind of stance. There have been so many, unethical gurus out there that have really harmed people. And I hear loud and clear that that's, the intention here is not that for you, obviously, or for me, or for anybody who has a consciousness about what we're here to do. And, again, what I'm here to do, my MO is to help people understand their point of power, their point of awareness, their point of standing in conscious awareness of their own choices, and what bringing to conscious awareness what their body wants them to know, what their history wants them to know. It changes lives for the positive, and that's health, isn't it? Right? That's health.
Well, I think it's what's necessary to draw the attention for that moment. I'm kind of like, I see this on a daily basis. So I'm not complacent at all. Every moment I see it, it's as if the first time I ever experienced it.
Me too.
And it just seems to be what's necessary for the human condition to level up, to realize there's something greater. And having a moment like that, a healing like that, mentally, emotionally, physically, it acquires this state of just expansion, which is what we're talking about, contracting and expanding.
Yes, beautiful. The bellows.
The bellows, right? Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing all your time with us today. And I'm going to put all your social media under this podcast. I'm going to have all my students, the OGs of the Way 126, which is my app, the subscribers of the YouTube. I want them to go out and source you out and find your material, start using it, researching, because every time I do an interview for all my students and the OGs, it's like a visceral experience, because it's this energetic oscillation that the audience has with myself and the podcast guest. So it's an incredible experience. So every time we have one of these, it's really profound. So in closing, can people seek you out for one-on-ones, or do you just do group, or explain to the audience?
Sure. So the website is thepracticalpath.com, and I teach, absolutely, I do one-on-ones. I offer services And I also teach my program, Medical Intuitive Training, in 2 levels. It's a 1-year program. That's all that information is available on the website. Everything is taught live online, just like we're doing on Zoom. So we have students from all over the world. It is for health and wellness professionals of all kinds. And I also teach a self-study workshop, which is coming very soon, in medical intuition for self-healing and self-care. And that will be for anyone and everyone, yourself and your clients or your patients who want to learn how to create that mind-body conversation. And start to see what their bodies want for them. So lots of good info, and those audios that I mentioned that are free for everyone to learn how to work with your own energy field. All of that's on the website. We hope you come and join us and enjoy it and let me know.
Again, my dear friend, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you, sir. I so appreciate it.
I'm very grateful. I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you in the next one, guys.